And do this for a second, and we are live. Mike is picking this up. Okay, so that'll pick up. So we're live, and we do have some attendees in Zoom mode. So if you'd like to begin, we can.
All right, good evening, everybody. I'm going to call to order. It's 5:03 p.m. Calling to order the bi-monthly meeting of the Citizens Police Advisory Council. So just want to welcome everybody. As everybody online notices, we are meeting for the first time in almost 3 years in person, which I think is great. I really appreciate everybody being here and taking the time to come. I know we've changed the meeting time and location, so this is great turnout. I really appreciate it. Before we get started with the rest of the meeting, I want to introduce Tommy Hummel, who's our most recent appointee to the council. So Tommy, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Tommy Hummel, moved to Charleston a couple of years ago now, looking to get involved. I recently did the Police Citizens Academy here and just really enjoyed it and learning more about the police force and looking to actively get involved here and help out and serve our great city. So
I appreciate that. And Tommy's one of the mayor's selections. So it was good to see that. I think you were appointed by Mayor Tecklenburg, right? As he was walking out, right?
yes, sir.
That's
yes,
awesome.
Sir. Yes, sir.
That's awesome. He heard our call for filling vacancies, so that was great. All right, Jill, if you would do the roll call, please.
Absolutely. Councilmember Twan Fielding. Councilmember Doris Grant. Councilmember Jerome Harris.
Present.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Thomas Hummel. Here. Thank you. Councilmember Jamie Kahn.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Joseph Kraus.
Present.
Thank you. Councilmember Philip Lucier.
Present.
Lucier, yeah. Yes, thank you. Councilmember Sarah Mack.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councilmember Harrison McIver.
Present.
Thank you. Councilmember David Saulnier.
Present.
Thank you. Councilmember Paul Tamburino.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Liliana Taylor. And Councilmember Imogene Thomas. Here. Thank you. That concludes the roll call.
And I believe we have a quorum. Okay, perfect. Next up, we're going to talk about vacancies. We're doing great. Obviously, we've got quite a few people. I will say that I know we've currently got 5 vacancies. Steve, do you want to speak to those?
So yes, our vacancies are in District 1, which we do have a nomination for that district, which I anticipate will be placed on council members' desks at the next council meeting, which is a week from Tuesday, and then would be voted on the following meeting after that. And then we still have the vacancies in District 6, District 7, District 8, and then the mayor's appointment for a student representative is still open. And so we have not received any nominations for 6, 7, 8, and I haven't heard from the mayor yet on the student.
Can you state which council members?
Sure. So District 1 is Council Member Gregg, but he has nominated someone. So we have a name and a resume from him. District 6 is Council Member Gregory. District 7 is Council Member Waring. District 8 is Council Member Seekings. And I know Council Chair Tamburino has reached out to all representatives who have vacancies and asked them to fill those.
I sent them all an email, as well as the last city council meeting that I attended. Various members.
Yeah, it looks like it's us. That is interesting.
For those listening in, we're having technical audio issues for being in person, so that's fine.
You just mute everybody.
That should be.
Is your live feed being brought same computer?
Yes,
Are you,
that might be it. Yep,
are you
you're
streaming? Yeah.
we go. Okay,
Okay, perfect.
thank you, guys.
Sorry about that, guys. We were watching ourselves being streamed, so that's how we get the echo. Real quick, I know I haven't even given him a chance to sit down. But, I want to welcome our city council member and new chair of Public Safety Committee. Councilmember Kevin Shealy just wants to come up here and say a few words.
Yeah.
Camera's right there.
Oh, there it is. Well, thank you. Am I on there? There we are.
There you
Start talking it already, you said.
In front of the camera.
Yeah, I just wanted to visit and, and see what you guys are up to. And, I appreciate the good work that everybody does. I know you're all volunteers. You're volunteering your time, and just want to say how much I appreciate it, and all the city council does. I know that several of you were appointed by city council members, and you've done a great job representing us. So I just want to say thank you, and just thought I'd listen in tonight, and maybe some in the future. But just want to tell you how much I appreciate you and all the work you do. So if I can help any of you in any way, please reach out and let me know. Thank you.
Thanks.
Does anybody have any questions for Councilmember Shealy?
Yeah.
Councilman, when's the next meeting of the Public Safety Committee?
It will be, oh gosh, caught me off. We will meet Mondays every month, once a month right now. And I'm trying to think.
So you'll meet before the
Yeah,
13th,
Yes. Whoa.
the 12th?
I got to check it and see. I'll let you know in just a little bit, Mr. Harris.
And I raise that for members because the Public Safety Committee covers a lot of policy activities and discussions and things of that nature relevant to our charge of CPAC. And listening to their committee meetings is something that I think is instructive for and help us do our work.
And for those of you that aren't aware, Councilmember Shealy is also a graduate of the Citizens Police Academy.
Yeah.
So we really appreciate that. Any other questions or comments? And welcome, Ms. Doris. How are you?
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you.
I may, just so you know, Councilmember, I may copy you on an email and you will leverage your help, enthusiasm. We still have certain council members that their positions are vacant. We've pushed and pushed and pushed, and you're in charge of. You can bring it up.
Yeah, I will.
So
I will.
So I'll
All right.
copy on it.
Thank you.
All right. So this time, Jill, were there any citizens that signed up to participate?
I did not receive anything in advance. No.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Suzanne Hardy indicated, I thought she had signed up, Joanne.
No, I did not receive a voicemail or anything on Innovate.
Did you?
She did indicate that she wanted,
Okay.
she's online.
We'll go ahead. And normally, folks, you need to register in advance just so we have that recorded. But Suzanne, did you want to come off mute and speak?
Yes, if you would unmute the telephone number 615, that's our person who is planning to provide comment tonight, Kathy Bennett.
Okay, I'm just asking to unmute.
You have to, because it's a phone. You have to, I think you have to unmute them. Yeah, there you go.
Okay. I believe that you can speak now and we can hear you.
Please,
Okay,
your
thank
name.
you. My name is Kathy Bennett. And
Yes.
shall I begin the comments? Shall I begin
Yes,
then?
We
Okay.
provide 2 minutes of comment time.
Okay, thank you so much. I wanted to say that the Racial Equity and Policing Community Forum was really a big success. We had about 279 participants, and many representative of the neighborhoods and communities in Charleston, and most were in person. I'm sorry to say, of course, here we go. Thanks to the collaborative efforts of the members of KGM, HARC, and CPAC for making it happen, and to Bob Kale and Associates for their great analyses. and it provides an assessment of meaningful progress and identifies key work to be done, especially for reducing disparities, which was the key intent of the racial bias audit. Bob Kale is currently summarizing citizens' inputs, and we expect that report in about a week, but we do have several asks of CPAC. The first, we have a meeting of 3 organizing groups next week to engage on this summary and develop our group and individual action plans. And we ask that CPAC identify 2 or more representatives to actively participate with this team. HARC has 2 representatives, the third is requested, and CAJM has a team in place. The second request, CAJM is chartered to specifically address racial disparities. CPAC and HARC have broader, yet still different purviews, but together we can enable a more equitable, peaceful, and a safer city and a better police department. What specific role will CPAC play in the follow-up on the external assessment report? And third, there are 2 specific areas from the racial disparities analysis from the external assessment that deserve immediate attention. The group, and in particular, we ask CPAC to penetrate these and identify clues for addressing reductions in multiple areas of racial disparities. We've got a couple of examples. When police have probable cause to search a vehicle, they find that contraband in 70% of searches of white drivers compared to just 50% of its searches of black motorists. And stops for suspected speeding and alcohol violations are about equal. Now, there are a number of recommendations from the report and 3 broad themes. What is CPAC's plan to engage with CPD on these, and will CPAC identify the goals for progress and completion on each of these? And how will CPAC hold CPD accountable for the delivery of these? And we look forward to hearing back from you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. If you would, please just, if you could email me or one of the council members, if you have their contact information, details, we can certainly, we can respond to that if you don't mind.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else? Okay. Hearing no more, that completes the citizen participation. Did everybody receive a copy of the minutes? If you want to put that out, please.
And I'm going to share my screen.
Everyone's had a chance, so if someone wants to make a motion to accept as published.
So moved.
Right,
Mr. Chair.
yes,
There is one question. I think we need to get a clarification from Captain Patel on the subcommittee reports in the third paragraph. Like it says on page 3, it reads, Captain Patel said that he had explained to Councilmember Grant that there had been numerous polls since September and an ongoing and sergeant promotional success. Not quite. I don't think polls are the.
it should be policies, correct?
Yeah, I just
the type.
I think it's a typographical error.
That's good.
Misinterpretation. I read that correctly.
Just want to change it around time. Everybody agrees with that change. It's just a typo. Any other corrections and any changes to it? All right. So all in favor of accepting the minutes as amended, say aye. Opposed? Let's have it. Minutes are approved.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
In the minutes, there are a number of items that refer to in terms of things that we're going to be reported back on that are not on the agenda. Just think we should go back over that and perhaps future agenda items.
Okay, no worries. All right, at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Walker for his commentary. Captain Cortella doesn't run him over. Chief, it's all yours. We were waiting for you.
Hi. It's kind of weird to see everyone in person. Used to seeing everybody on the Zoom. So, good evening.
Good evening.
I'm standing over here, seeing you on camera.
Oh, okay. Well, how about I sit next to you, Paul?
Oh, boy.
No, just couple quick updates from us, CPD. First of all, thank everyone that came out last week. Last week? I'm losing track of time. Last week for the, for the community forum. Like I said, that was very important to get some input and feedback and kind of press it forward. So appreciate all the work that went into that. Just fast forward ahead. A lot of initiatives. We're right in the middle of our first quarter. That's the first 3 months of the year. One of the biggest things right now for us is retention and recruiting, staffing. So, Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, I got a group of like 28 Clemson students coming in.
You know, steal my announcements for later, but
Oh, I'm sorry.
go ahead with it.
But that's it, that is. So, that's like our number one priority right now. We just started a class of 11 last week for our police corps. And now we're looking for hiring and for our June class, which this Clemson group will be a big part of that initiative. So anywhere from 20 to 25 is my goal for that class. Everything I'm doing is pushing towards it. Second thing is just the organization and the structure. Primary focus for me is putting some things in place that we didn't have in the past. One of the new hires that I just hired is a youth program coordinator. That is Jerome Smalls. I'm not sure if y'all are familiar with Jerome. He used to be with the mayor's office, really sharp individual. But just hired him at the department to, and he'll be an attachment to the community-oriented policing efforts to work with that group. And this is going to be focused solely on the demographics that we see a lot of the issues with, especially violent crimes. And it's designed to work outside jurisdictional lines. The only people that look at jurisdictional lines are the government. And you got people traveling back and forth for business, pleasure. They don't know where North Charleston County or city starts and begins. So Jerome is focused on that. He will work with different organizations in this area. One in particular is Keith Smalls, Ron Smith, some of our other groups that's really focused on finding some viable answers to some of the issues that we see, especially targeting gun violence. The second one is and I haven't hired this yet, is a Spanish coordinator for the department. That will be focused on that demographic that's truly oftentimes ignored. And that's from everything from recruiting to certain calls for service, community outreach. They will be embedded with the community-oriented policing platform to help address that demographic. So, I mean, it's been really fast-paced, a lot of moving parts since the beginning of the year. So getting everything structural-wise for the organization is kind of what I'm working on. Still in a lot of transition. We still transition as a city. The department is still in the middle of transition, but getting all these key positions in place to kind of make a difference. And then lastly, public safety. Public safety is always number one for us, but that is really what we're focusing on right now as an agency. Just had an incident on the bridge for those that try to get here and may couldn't. But yeah, we still got a lot of things we got to focus on in the community. So, I mean, as a priority for the agency, making sure we have the resources to take care of it and the staffing and personnel to handle anything that pops up. So, in a nutshell, that's my priorities right now.
So real quick, we had the meeting on Thursday. You were there. Do you want to speak to CPAC about, what you got from the meeting and what your plan is going forward as far as overall?
Yeah, it hadn't changed from when we presented in public safety. And if you haven't heard, it's documented. We will continue. We're not looking for check the box. Okay. This is not an overnight. I wave my magic wand and we fix everything that's been laid out. And if you're expecting that, you're kind of mismanaging the expectations. It's not. Everything that we're doing is designed to go into our strategic plan. That was part of the discussion that was put on record at public safety. Everyone still buys into it. That's what we are moving forward. So the meeting last Thursday was the final piece of that demographic to get the community, let Bob Kale present his information to the community and solicit the feedback. So, and I think it was recorded. I haven't heard anything else from Bob. I think they recorded those sessions. We'll take those things and didn't.
From what I understand,
Contrary.
when I asked after,
If the discussions at the tables were summarized, written out, and will be transcribed and provided.
so the meeting itself was not recorded,
But that's
from
what
what I
I'm
understand, right?
Presentations from the front was recorded, but not the individual roundtable discussions.
Yeah, but yeah, and so, and keeping in mind, that's an assessment of the work that's been done and not losing focus of that work that's been done. It's our commitment at CPD to continue, that's always been the plan, to continue that work. So we're at the end of the strategic plan in 2024. This is the last year. We'll start building out for 2025. Correct, Tony? If I'm right. So, and instead of doing 5 year, the plans probably, they gotta be a little bit shorter. 3 years is what I'm looking at. That way, if anything changes, you can address it sooner than later, So, but everything that we're doing, any changes that's been made, any recommendations that we do pick up from the last piece, everything will be involved into that plan moving forward.
What are the questions y'all have for the chief?
Smile, come on.
You
now,
got
give
him in
us
front of
something.
you.
Oh, I didn't recognize you. What's going on?
Chief, you talked about recruiting, but what about retention and or turnover?
That's it.
How is turnover at
No.
levels you're expecting or historical or?
No, we've been pretty consistent from the last 5 year trend. So we just put that class in of 11, and we also got two prior certs that came from outside the state that was law enforcement. So that's 13. Probably floating somewhere right around 30 to 32 vacancies after that class. That's average. So when we only have 3 classes a year, most of the people we lose, if we're not dismissing them from the department, is like people going back home. We hire a lot of folks from outside this area, a lot of college educated kids. At some point, people decide to leave and go back home. We also push a lot of people off in the federal government. So, and those are not what we constitute bad leaves. So we actually pride ourselves on it. It's been like that since I got hired. It's just the quality of people that we want to attract to the agency.
What's in terms of classes, what's the percentage of those who make it through the process of those who may not?
Yeah, we may lose 1 or 2 per class, but we kind of try to weasel all of that out in the recruitment process. So other than a military exception, you got to have a 4-year college degree for the most part to come on. And then you really scrutinize in every aspect of their life. I just talked about it a little bit earlier during the meeting, man. A lot of the issues that people tend to have, a lot of things you see in the national news or agencies and police, and people love to jump on the training. It starts way before training. A lot of the things that you get is at the hiring process. You're bringing these folks into a culture. So are you hiring the right people for your culture and your community? So one of the things that got brought up, I think, in the assessment. One of the things that got brought up is this is the racial component of the demographics. Okay, I'm very unapologetic. We polygraph everybody that works within this agency. So you're gonna lose people. All right, it's not widgets. We're not just picking, we're getting the best candidates, and that's by design. So if that calls us not hiring just to fill vacancies and numbers, I'm okay with it. Because if you are hiring just to fill numbers, you're gonna pay for it one way or another in the long run. Okay. So I know that didn't come out in the report to add a little more context to that and a lot of other pieces of that. You got to take that in consideration. You don't just hire to fill holes, okay? You don't. So that's one of the things we've always prided ourselves on. Civilian staff and sworn.
But are you proactive? I know when we went to the police academy, there was a clear, small, very small percentage of Spanish speaking or at least ethnicity of Spanish members of the force. Anything you're doing to be proactive in terms of recruitment, since you recruit outside of?
That goes back to that piece I just told you about who I'm hiring as far as my Spanish coordinator. And yeah, I mean, we reach out, we got Spanish victim advocates, but it's still getting the right qualified people, not just because you speak Spanish.
Well, I was
Spanish heritage. So,
well, okay, we could help us.
yeah.
Okay,
It's not for lack of effort.
Okay.
If I answer your question.
okay.
So how is that rate going? Is that increasing minority rates? Is that?
It's still about the same. It's about the same. And when you're saying minorities, the demographics, are you talking about African American? Are you talking about women? Are you talking about? Well, this class that we just hired, I think I got 5 women, 1 Asian, 1 African American. If that's what you're asking, but yeah, all that is taken consideration. But I'm looking for good candidates all across the demographics, and I would plug in pool. Same way.
You said there's a class of 25 Clemson students. What are they coming to do?
So that's a recruitment initiative. Jason to talk about it since he said I stole his thunder, but yeah.
Well, you can just talk about everything. I can leave it.
It's part of us being very proactive in our approach and having partnerships with different institutions. I do the same thing at other institutions at Citadel, South Carolina State. Clemson is one of the ones this is kind of like a pilot where we're actually going to do people that's getting ready to graduate. They can probably be able to do everything. And it's more like a built-in Citizens Academy. And it's the same thing for those that haven't been through. We really sell our Citizens Academy. I would much rather you know what we're doing than you reading in a news outlet or taking word of mouth or somebody outside this area trying to talk on our behalf. I've offered it to everybody that will listen. Okay, not just pro-police, antagonists as well, atheists, Jews, Gentiles, anybody that want to come and learn about public safety has an option to come through that Citizens Academy. The things that y'all be asking on a regular basis as far as policy, procedure, traffic stops, use of force, everything is covered in that Citizens Academy. And it's 8 weeks and it's very intensive. Okay. It's almost like I use the same analogy. Everybody want to go to heaven, but no one wants to die. Everyone wants to know about the police department, but don't want to come and actually get engaged with the police department.
One way to get engaged is through internships. What type of programs?
We have a very extensive intern.
And so that's some of what the Tiger, we've just called it Tiger Academy. We've got a really good relationship, and it was there before me. Those of you that know me, I'm a Clemson guy. But this was kind of existing. Jerry Cherry's been working on this for years with this relationship with the head of the college at criminal justice at Clemson. And they reached out like, hey, our students just need a little bit more exposure. They need to kind of see what the job is more than a ride along. So we took our Citizens Academy platform, we crammed it into a weekend. We're gonna let them go through a test run of our testing. Like, this is what a test is gonna feel like, right? And the reason we chose to start with them, because we have a lot of interns. We have generally about I would say 10 to 12 every semester from the Citadel or College of Charleston, or even some Charleston Southern students come down. So
out of state.
They'll come and they'll do those type of things. We even have we call our skill bridge program. People that are about to get out of the military, they'll come and they'll do an internship to see if they want to be a police officer. And that one has a relatively, I want to say, close to like 3 out of 4 people with the skill bridge will come straight over from the military in. So we've got a lot of things local. We're trying to figure out how to expand that out. So after we have some feedback from this first weekend, we're starting it tomorrow afternoon. And this was something Clemson came to us and was like, hey, we want somebody to do this. Clemson's paying for everything to come down. They're having their students come down. It's part of their program. So we're just facilitating the instruction, the ride-alongs, all that kind of stuff. So they're going to get a Citizens Academy in about 72 hours. So they're not going to get much sleep while they're here. They're going to run through it all. And hopefully that'll be a good. And then that way y'all have something that you have your alumni. Hey, USC contact. We'll start building those relationships.
Thank you.
Come down for the weekend. We can knock that out and really just expose them to a different side of the policing before they really get in the job and start having to fill out those applications.
And the local universities, they take full advantage of it a lot. So them coming down from the upstate and specific for that is really big for us.
Are the interns paid? You said Clemson's paid, but how about the other intern?
Well, Clemson is paying for their students to come down, so they're covering the hotel cost.
Yeah.
I don't think they're getting paid to come.
Oh, they're not.
We-
Yeah,
No,
it's not a paid
it's normally-
internship.
It's
So like when I was at Citadel, they had probably triple that amount interning here, and it was for college credit.
Oh,
So they'd come, like I did mine with public defender's office, but a lot of them came to the police department and spent a whole semester where
oh,
they're doing the 2 or 3 hours and, they're not getting paid for it. They're getting college credit
okay.
for it. Jerry, I know you had a
I
question.
would, another chief, you outlined that the strategic plan is going to reflect the game plan, if you will, for whatever changes and priorities. What's your timetable for developing that and process, and how might CPAC be involved in that?
Yeah, that's the strategic plan. Like I say, we haven't finished this one, so I work in quarters. We'll start that one. I gotta finish out this quarter with some of the organization and transition. And then we'll start working in the second quarter towards that strategic plan. That will involve Ms. Edson and some of our local university and academics with that actual plan out. But you will be in the middle because of what CPAC has. So it'll be a collaboration. But that will be probably second quarter
Okay.
start frame.
Any other questions for the chief?
Well, hop back on internships. So they are not any paid internships.
No, ma'am, not like that.
Has that been considered?
Not right now. We have to stick with what we got.
Honestly, we can
Budget-wise.
barely handle
Yeah.
what we do get that are free, so they're not getting paid, so. I'm not sure where we would put any more that we have, so we haven't had a problem incentivized getting it in from the local universities yet.
And we haven't lacked for interns. We haven't. And like I say, this is a big one with Clemson, because like I say, that's just that many students coming down and being able to go through our process and try to get as many as we can that's actually pass everything to come on board. That'll be good for us.
Jason, let me ask you, I know you don't have numbers in front of us, so ballpark. What's the percentage that go from intern into hire? We're talking about the college students who come here and spend a semester.
So the skill bridge is pretty high, because they're already in the area. They're likely like Charleston, transition out of the military. And typically they've been on the younger side, so maybe. The others, part of it's just their class and they're going back home anyway. So some of them, we know they're not going to be in law enforcement. We're just giving them a little taste of it so they can go apply to the FBI, wherever they want to think their dreams are going to take them and that type of thing. So it's, I would say close to about 30%, just from the college side of things. We have that. I mean, for those of you that follow our Facebook page, if you saw the story with Officer Went, he did a ride along with our social media, and that's how he started. He did an intern here. Actually, he met Terry Cherry at a class at the Citadel. She was talking, and then he came and did an internship for a semester, and then he decided this is where he wanted to be. So we have a fair number of those. So it's pretty successful for us there. It's just a matter of, we don't go into it thinking we're going to hire everybody. Certainly we'd love to, but
To that point, they got to get through the process. The internship is one thing, it's a lot easier. They still got to get through all the background, the testing, the poly, the psychological, and everything else associated with it. So.
and I would say the interns decide when they see the culture here, whether or not they want to be a part of it. So if they decide not to, we're generally okay with that.
Any other questions or comments for the chief? All right, appreciate that. And you can stick around. Don't argue. The bridge is closed. You can't go anywhere.
It's back open.
It was open. All right, okay, so now, for my update, we've talked about a lot of it. So going backwards, obviously, attended with Jerry. And his name is Jerry, but it's at the recent city council meeting. We did highlight, the ERA assessment audit coming up. So I think that was important to make sure. What I would say, and I know Dave's going to talk about this quite a bit, but one of the big focuses we need to do is when you go and you read that ERA assessment, I mean, CPAC has a big piece of that. And what's our piece? It's our ability to communicate, right? That's the biggest piece that we do. I think we do a great job of working with the department. I don't think that's in question. I think what the reality is, what are we doing as far as our outreach, making sure that we're listening to voices in the community, but at the same time, we're privy to a lot of information because we have more access to the leadership here than the common, just regular citizens do. So it's important for us to make sure that as we hear topics and things like that, we're pressing those forward. We're also saying, what kind of programs can we do? When we're listening to the public, what can we talk to the department about? Hey, we've got a good idea about this. We want to help facilitate this. So that ERA assessment meeting, we weren't the sponsors of it. It wasn't our agenda, but we certainly wanted our full force of CPAC to go out and promote that, because that is a public meeting where public safety is being discussed, and we need to be involved anytime that comes to play, no matter what group's presenting. We're CPAC, and the city has recognized that that's our role. And so that's probably the one thing that we can do better. I know during COVID, when I first came on, we met once, and then we all went back to went into the Zoom world. And so we couldn't do these meetings in person, but more importantly, those important things like the neighborhood meetings. I know y'all are pretty big on those, but we all need to get big on those. So I attended the ERA assessment. I was pleased. I think we had 9 members of CPAC there. I think that's more participation than we've had in meetings of CPAC. So I want to thank you all. And the fact that the CPAC members were not gathered in a cluster. I mean, that was, I didn't even know, Doris, I found out towards the end, I was like, if Doris is here, Miss Sarah, I didn't even know you were there. And it's like, because everybody was spread out participating. And that's really the key thing to do, because I know it's very easy. We know each other, come in a group, sit at a table together. Saw none of that. So that was great. I appreciate everybody attending. I think there was a lot of information that came out of that. It's very important. Sometimes it's hard to hear negative feedback. It's very easy to become defensive about it. I know I'm guilty of that. I was critical of a few things there. But the reality is, people were interested enough to come sit in a room. They need to be heard, and they need to be taken seriously, whether you necessarily agree with it or not. Their voice is important to them as yours is to you. So we need to be a part of that. So I appreciate everybody coming out for that. But that wasn't the end, right? Us going to a meeting is not fulfilling our responsibility. That's initiating our responsibility. And Dave's going to talk to that. I think that was great. Another event I attended earlier last week, I had to put on a suit twice last week, which is crazy. I don't do that in a whole year. Is we had a critical incident happen with the police department. There was a police officer involved shooting that took place at the beginning of the week. I received a call, and back in the day, we hadn't had one of those. It was almost 3 years since the last police involved shooting, which is a great statistic for a department this big. Back in the day when that happened, I attended all 3 of them, because we had 3 in a short period of time. And the reason why I attended is Twan was the chair at the time. They reached out to her. She couldn't come. She reached out to me as vice chair. And this occasion as chair, they called me and said, hey, can you attend? I looked at it was a good opportunity for me to get out of my client call. So I was like, yeah, I'll go. But it was really important to see. And I think, Jerry and I talked about it afterwards. One of the areas we want to improve upon, and reason why you're going to see we're going to get into creating the communications subcommittee again, was having a better network of when that happens, how do we get that message out? Because you all represent your communities as well as just CPAC. So I know that's something we want to work on. Chief Walker, that was his first as the formal chief. He did a really good job. It's a small room compared to the ones I went to in the past. There was a lot of community representatives. So that's one of the things we need to look at is this time there was none. I didn't go and do a lot. I had to go back to work, but were they all invited? Different areas. I know there's been some turnover in some of the leadership, but that's an area we can focus on to say, can we help you with a formal process of who's involved in the communication? I know the media was here.
Paul's question, what are we talking about? The press conference related to that?
So we get invited before. What happens is they typically will do a pre-briefing. So community leaders, I know that they typically, I know on site, they'll call the city council members. And the city council member, the ones I've been to, the city council members usually in person. I think it was Mitchell when I went to the ones a couple of years ago. We had one in team 4. And I know Kevin, you were there for that.
Yep.
One of them, I think Peter, because Peter was chair of public safety, Peter was at all the ones I went to. So at the time they do a pre-briefing. You come in here, the chief gives an informal briefing before the media comes in. So any of the community leaders are in that pre-briefing. The only ones that aren't in there for that is the media. And he runs through, they do a little bit of a dry run. So I know, Deputy Chief Weiss got up there. Jason, I think you had your part in that. So they were going over it, mostly Gibson making sure Sergeant Gibson is in charge of public affairs. They can't get into details, obviously, because those are turned over to SLED immediately. So, what they're going to say is nothing. I would say that Chief Reynolds probably divulged a lot more, and that probably there's a reason why they probably had to scale that back, because I was at one where I know he was showing pictures of the weapons used and things like that. And this is before SLED had even given their report. So they do a pre-briefing. It's about 15 to 20 minutes. They just familiarize you. You can ask questions, and then the media comes in, and that's when you see the formal press conference that they do. And again, at the end of the day, there's really not much they say because they have to turn it over to SLED. So they give really general details. The unique thing for those of you that haven't been involved or seen it yet, 3 years ago when these happened, they came up with this briefing video. And it doesn't come out until maybe a month or two after. It's after SLED's released their portion. So in the state of South Carolina, the law is that it's up to the police chief or the municipality on what's their schedule. Do they feel like releasing body worn cameras or not? And so they follow a policy. And within this department, their policy is not to release it immediately until SLED's done it, unless, and this is always new to me too. The rule is unless there's a big public outcry, there's a big reason where, passions are inflamed, you've now got problems. Then the chief has the likelihood of turning around and saying, I'm going to go ahead and release this because we can't wait a month or two for Scarlett Wilson to release her findings. It's important enough to the community. But they do put together, I don't know if you've all seen it on YouTube, but you can. They put together a briefing, and it's a combination of the body worn cameras, and there's a narrative to it. And there's promoters of this style, and there's detractors. There are some that say that the police department putting that narrative to the video is kind of skewing the public, just release it out there. But the flip side of that is when you just look at raw camera, you don't know the whole story. How did we get there? Who's driving up? What are they doing? So, I can see both sides of that. But the police department, I did ask at this one if that was something they planned on doing again, and the answer was yes. So they do have to wait for SLED's ruling on that. That's where we're at the critical briefing.
Can I just clarify something, Paul? Just to hit on it again. A lot of that pre-briefing, if you will, we do that for the community members in that area. We have an officer-involved critical incident guide that Solicitor Wilson came up with. They work with all the departments in the area to really streamline a process. Most officers, most commanders know that inside and out, but we don't expect the public to know that. So that's what most of the conversation and the briefing is about, is what's next. And we can just go to that. We don't want to read it to you, but that's pretty much what we're doing, is just reading that to you. But most people don't follow that. They don't read that. They don't know it by heart. So it just allows those community members that are directly impacted about what's happened, what's next, and allow them to ask that question. That way they're not intimidated by the cameras being in the room. And then we do very, very similar to that with the media right after that.
Paul,
So
could I ask, Jason, which directive is that covered under?
which policy? This was Solicitor Wilson's.
So
she has the
Department
Department
of critical incident.
But she has the overall guide that says
Right,
this is how she's going to handle it in her
one
office.
specific
Right. So it's numerous policies for us to go all over the place.
Thank you.
But it's on her website, and it's.
The only other thing that was different this time is because the suspect that was involved in the shooting didn't die. I know in the previous ones, the suspect died in that one, and he was meeting with the suspect, the dead suspect, the family beforehand. So they were meeting off in his office while we were all in here. They didn't bring the family in here, obviously, but that was a different piece that does happen. So I know that's part of their process. because they showed them I think in those occasions, they showed the body worn camera footage to them. You know, they weren't releasing it to us, but I think they did more with them at that time. So it was really, really, interesting to be a part of.
Now, did you say that you got information out to the surrounding neighborhoods about the incident?
For me, no. I think it was already in the news by the time I got the call. That's the news. And in fact, it's always interesting. So I read the story when Jill called me. I didn't know. So I didn't read, I wasn't looking at the news that morning. I went online to look and said what happened. Because there's nothing she can tell me. And I read it, and there were even details there that weren't necessarily very accurate. Because I think the first report made it look like the officer had been shot. And when I got to the briefing, and Chief Walker called me beforehand just to fill me in, no, the officer was not shot. So you like anything else, the story evolves over time. And by the time we got to the briefing, this happened the night before, and the briefing happened at 2:00.
Yes, it was.
So the briefing was at 2. So, obviously gave the department time to put together what they need to do, sled, whatever. It's not a knee jerk where they're going to do it. Now I know in the earlier one, the media was on site and the chief was on site. It was a little bit more drastic at that one. So I know they did a little bit more press release back then. All right. Any other questions about the critical incident? And then the last thing that I did, which was nice, and I enjoyed it, is I attended the Charleston Police Department Awards banquet, which was very nice. I have to commend Charleston Place. If any of y'all ever go by Charleston Place, I've walked through it, never eaten there, never stayed there. I wish I rolled like that, but had a really nice banquet. This thing's really evolved for them. And I have to say, this was there was 300-400 people there, and Charleston Place donated the entire event. I mean, the food, and it was filet mignon. So it wasn't like.
You didn't tell us about it.
Well, I didn't find out till they called me the last second. But the tickets it wasn't cheap because it was part of Lens. So that was really neat to see the officers, not just the officers that received awards. Our own Jill was awarded the Professional Employee of the Year. I think we can all agree, especially those of you who've been here from the beginning, and you've seen the liaisons we've had in the past. We know the effort that Jill's putting into it, and so I think that was a great award. Their fleet services, they have a lot of different people, so it's not just officers. That was really neat, And what I liked about it is I'd been to a couple of them, and they started out really small. And the officers were in their uniforms, and they were all in a little pack over in the corner because they were in uniform. This one, they were all in civilian clothes. They had their families with them, their friends with them. It's much more comfortable and rewarding for them because obviously when you can play the game they're on duty all the time, but there's a big difference between you put on your uniform and when you're in regular clothes, you get to clown a little bit more. So it was really good to see that room was mostly full of the department. And so they were the recipients of the generosity. It's not all the movers and shakers of Charleston. This was, the department. And it was good to see. A lot of civilian employees were there. Really good to see. That was pretty much what I've got. Real quick, I'll put them on the spot. Logan, you want to introduce yourself to the group?
Hey, everybody. I'm Logan McVeigh. I work in the mayor's office. Some familiar faces in here, but good to know all y'all. Sorry I'm late. There was a little traffic on Lockwood. I know a guy I'm going to take that up with. But appreciate y'all for having me.
Appreciate it. And those of y'all that were at the ERA assessment who were the guy in the back list, so that's Logan. So it's great that he's attending. And, I have to say, just to editorialize, have Councilmember Shealy here, have a representative from the mayor's office. That's respect for us and what we do. And I really appreciate that. It also gives us access to them when we want something, shoot them back because you're not a stranger anymore. So when we need something, we've got a voice. So I think that's great. Any questions for me? All right. I appreciate it.
I did want to mention that I do have scheduled February 12th at 2:00, and it'll be the second Monday. Now, Logan may change that because we're shifting some, and he's kind of in charge of committees and stuff like that. So that's why I was a little bit hesitant to answer you. I wanted to make sure I had it right. But as of right now, February 12th at 2:00, and as of right now, it's the second Monday of each month that public safety will meet. So it's on YouTube, so you can watch it, just like these meetings are on YouTube. There's also a call-in number as well if you wanted to listen on your phone.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I stream in afterwards.
Where is it?
What time?
It's city council.
2:00.
You do yours in the council chambers too? Yeah, council
I'm
chambers.
going to try to do, it'll be hybrid. It'll be like yours. I'm gonna try to do hybrid. I think it's much better for public safety if we can get together.
All right, we're gonna move on to the subcommittee reports. We did something a little bit different this time. I've asked everybody to submit their reports in writing. So what I'm asking the different council members to do is please read these reports so that when you come, you know, they can give a very high level. They don't have to get into the minutia of it, but they can really bring out topics that they need to discuss with CPAC. So they don't have to go over their whole report. So please read it in advance and come with your questions that you have. The first one is going to be Ms. Doris with policies and procedures.
Y'all read the report? You have any questions? I'll just highlight a few information. We did submit a written report, and on that we indicated that 5 of the 7 policies that were provided for us in 2023 from the Department Review List has been reviewed. We have received the 2024 list of policies for review, which included 15 policies.
Give or take.
Yeah, around that. Our most recent policy for review was GO 82 traffic unit. And we submitted those comments supposedly yesterday, but early this morning.
They were in a timely manner.
Yeah. So and thank you all who took the time to offer comments for that. Members were asked to, from the 2024 policies for review, members were asked to rank the list so we can determine the policies that we would like first to tackle. And we did receive that ranking. I was supposed to get that out earlier. I asked Jill to get that out for me today. I hope you got it and possibly had a chance to review it before we met today. Pretty much that concludes our report. The subcommittee report, policy subcommittee reports. If there are questions, I'll answer.
Doris, question. I'm David. So I see the voting tally. Is that going to be the order, or do the police and others override it, or what's the process for actually determining the order?
Well, I believe the department has a list of policies.
That if I just tied up on email, I'm get caught up. So since CPAC voted, what we've done in the past is that the ones with the most votes, so Brennan Department of Policing, response to resistance, less lethal and lethal weapons, vehicular pursuit, and there's evidence and investigations, we could probably get 5 out. We will look at those and we'll just determine the timeliness that we can get those out for CPAC.
Those seem about right in y'all's opinion, or?
100%.
Okay.
The only other question I had from 2023 list, GO 39, and I don't recall.
Alternatives to arrest.
Right, that was on there, so it didn't appear on the.
No, so you will get that. My email got hacked last week, so I was out of email for 4 days. So I'm finally trying to get caught up on stuff, so that's why I made it dated right now. But I will get that to you this week so you can send it so we can remove for CPAC.
So before we get into that,
you weren't supposed to?
No, I did not. They asked me that and they couldn't find anything that I clicked on that I shouldn't have. So I got lucky. No one called me out.
So we'll tackle that before we go to the 2024 list.
May I ask a question? Who drafted it?
Who drafted?
Drafted the policy? Who drafted it?
The department.
Department?
Yeah.
Okay, I guess that's an obvious
Well,
question.
I don't know who specifically drafts it.
These aren't new. These are policies that they're existing policies.
They
So what
existing
do
policies and we come in on.
And
what they do, you want to explain the process?
Yeah, they're existing policies, they're being updated. And
Okay.
they're asking the CPAC to review those policies as they update.
What we do is we typically, it's like take a Word document. And they take the existing policy, and when they do the markup, they put the commentary on so we can see, we're removing this line, we're adding this. We're actually reviewing their recommended edits, but we go in there and we also look at the entire policy and say, we know these are your edits. We also, because I know a lot of questions come up over, why aren't you including this? Why aren't you doing this? So it's a review of the edit and all the feedback is channeled. And that's how it comes through. So no, I don't think anybody's sitting down going,
A little correction. See, I think they've
There's no
already
edits.
edited, we get it, so we don't see
See the
them.
edits.
we did.
So what generally happens is if there are major changes to the policy, we'll let you know what's being changed, but probably for the last 4 or 5 policies, we haven't had any major changes that I can even think of. So there would be nothing to report out on, but the one that dealt with there was a traffic policy, we took the constitutional issues out of that and made it its own policy. So that was the major change. That was one of the biggest ones, I think, last year that we dealt with. But besides that, the last policy that you guys have reviewed, there's been no major changes for us to communicate that we've had all these changes.
Yeah, but I think when we were going through the guidance of creating our guidelines, we had, remember, the first thing was recommended to us was, well, you can go on the website and look it up. I was like, okay, but that's, we're more interested in the subject matter experts and everybody else have come in. And here are the recommended changes to it. Take a look at these. So we can say, well, that was kind of our agreement, right?
Yeah, well, as Captain Cordella said, there were a couple of policies that they made changes to, so they sent us the original policy and the updated policy. So we had an opportunity to look at both. But most recently, as he said, I guess they have not been any.
Nothing's really changed. So the backstory to this is, I think 4 years ago, Ms. Doris asked us often to review our policies. I said, that's a fantastic question. And we realized that we didn't have a strict guideline for that. So we developed a policy or a process to review every policy every 3 years. Some policies get updated every year or reviewed every year. Use of force, vehicle pursuits, organizational, fair and impartial policing. There's certain policies that we just have to touch every year. Our special units, SWAT, bomb, hostage, K9 gets reviewed every year. So those ones, but there might be some obscure ones such as our social media policy that we just don't have to touch that every year. That'd be every 3 years. So the policy will get touched at least at a minimum every 3 years. But a lot of times that policy has already been getting touched. So we don't need to make those extensive markups that we had to make before, to where it might have been 5-6 years for some of those policies. I believe our grooming standards was almost 10 years that we haven't touched it, but it was grooming standards. So the importance, we own that one, but thanks to Doris, now it's every 3 years that every policy gets touched.
And one of the things that we are lacking, though, is the feedback regarding how our comments have been received by the agency. I think the policy before 81.
So we haven't touched, so back in September, we started a promotional process. And the way it works is we have to announce it for 60 days ahead or 60 days ahead of time before we could even do anything. But those sergeants were studying policy. So we couldn't change policy in the middle of them studying their test. It's just not fair to them. We, resourced a company. They created a test based on the policies that were available on Power DMS. So we couldn't change it. So we haven't updated any of those policies that you guys worked on, because the process just got finished December, it was 15th or 16th. The last review of the final process was the first week in January. The chief interviews coming up this week. So there's still some time to challenge. So we can't touch anything until it's pretty much set in place. It's the problem with, of how we have it, but it's just to be fair to the candidates that we can't change policy on them during, when they're studying for it.
But to Doris's point, so when you do make the change, I know the one time, I think I've seen it once where you had the law enforcement recommendations and you had a commentary next to it, accepted, not accept, and you put reasons why.
We haven't done that yet because we haven't been able to touch policies.
But when you do, we can still expect that to come back.
Yes.
Okay.
That would be helpful.
Yeah. Well, because it's also respectful. People doing it, I took the time to sit down and give you a recommendation. I'd like to know why you did or didn't, Any other questions for Doris? Thank you, ma'am. And I want to thank everybody. I think Jill sent me a note yesterday about, hey, can I get a list of all the people that are members of the subcommittee? I'm like, well, policy and procedure. A lot of people show up. You're the most well attended, so I think that's awesome. Thank you. All right, next, complaint review. Harrison.
Okay. I'm gonna start with this. Successful public service safety all depends on community trusting and cooperating with law enforcement agents. Generally, overall. I can summarize that in a way, but would you put up the four operating procedures?
Sure.
And I can just summarize this. Basically, nothing has changed from our approving the four operating procedures since October 5th CPAC meeting. We have reached out to the CPD asking for them to review it. Attorney Revlin initially gave feedback, and we talked that there would be a response pursuant to the review and would be presented by this meeting. So in the interim, I spoke with Captain Teller, and he agreed that he would give an update on where we are in terms of the four procedures that have been proposed. I will say that those procedures were drafted and they are aligned with what I understand the CPAC guidelines are. So I really would like to understand better, why the policies are still under review, and when can we expect we can start functioning as a subcommittee. He did say that, and I mentioned the alignment issue because it was mentioned that the city council may have to weigh in. So I may, if it's turn it over to.
So I do have good news for you. So we have worked diligently over the last 2.5 weeks, really hard on just a lot of issues. And we will have the fourth quarter statistical data in 2023 to be able to present to the complaint subcommittee. And if Jill would want to schedule that, we can get that on the books whenever the timing allows.
Yeah, I will contact you tomorrow, Chair McIver.
Is that responsive?
Yeah,
So
things scheduled.
Well, are we saying? So, what about the four procedures? Are you okay with them? You're saying?
So I'll let Steve comment on those, but we have the statistical data ready to.
Okay, you're doing okay. I see. This is a little bifurcated. So
yeah, so we have met several times on the proposal, and as you stated, basically the procedure presented is a restatement of the guidelines. So basically, we already have a guideline that has this information in it.
Okay.
Some of the concern we had as we add more committees to this council, are we going to have separate documents for each committee? And I think it's going to become unruly. So I think our preference is to rely on the guidelines, not have a separate procedure for every committee. And then, of course, part of this was also getting the input of the chief who was transitioned in. And then, of course, we also have a new mayor that we also plan to meet with on these committees and councils to discuss what direction he sees these going into. So I don't think we're going to have a separate procedure. What the guidelines do provide for, though, is the first step is providing the statistical data. And I think
that's what.
Yeah, he's going to present that. And I think what we can do is we can send that to you, Councilmember McIver, and I think Councilmember Khan is also on this committee. And you guys will have that statistical data that can be discussed at your subcommittee meeting for complaints. And then the next steps would be the guidelines provide for summaries of closed investigations that you can look at for purposes of making recommendations on police community interactions and recommendations for modifications and enhancements regarding officer response and training. So that's kind of the direction we're going in. But I think we're starting with the statistical data. From there, you go to the summaries and then recommend.
Can you, because I haven't seen what you just alluded to, can you send the summaries? And it's in the guidelines?
Yeah,
It's in the guidelines, okay.
So it's under the CPAC tasks.
Okay, I got you, I
It's the
got you.
second to last
Okay,
page is
okay.
where it's listed, Citizen Advisory Council actions and tasks.
All right.
So one thing I would say, so you're right, we don't need to keep resubmitting guidelines, and we're not. What each subcommittee is doing is creating an SOP, right? How they're gonna take these guidelines and actually transact. So we know we have our mission statement. We don't need to go to city council for an SOP as long as it falls within the guidelines. And I think that's the confusion. They were just trying to create and present to CPAC saying, hey, now that we're a subcommittee, this is the steps we're gonna do, because you also need to, we can't just say to Captain Cortella or anybody else, hey guys, go read our guidelines because that's what we're gonna do. It's putting a process map in place. So this is really an SOP that you're doing.
Okay.
And all the subcommittees will do that. We have that. The only reason why the policy subcommittee was presented to city council, and there was a very distinct reason for that, is we have a great working relationship, but our policies need to be here if we don't. And so that was one we wanted memorialized by city council, so that if somebody came along and said, well, you know what, we don't feel like doing that right now, we can use, hey, it's not your choice anymore. Your boss said this is what you're empowered to do. So in this case, these are more SOPs. We're not changing anything. It doesn't need to go. I think we said this last meeting. Doesn't need to go to city council because we're not trying to step outside of what our world is. This is just their operations. I want them to get to a point like any chair would want, you know, guys, build a timeline. So you're working with Captain Cortella. Who's our liaison? You can't be a liaison for everything. You need to start delegating, huh?
Lieutenant Bailey.
There you go. So identifying your SOP should be it's Lieutenant Bailey, and is that role, you know, they move people around all the time. Is it going to be filled? What's a timeline? Okay. We meet, if you're meeting every month or every 2 months, we want to go backwards. It's building a calendar, you know, Lieutenant Bailey. So you're going to give us end of quarter. When can we expect that end of quarter? So, you know, you guys are used to SOPs all day long. And that's what we're really looking for, is more of an SOP for the subcommittees. Nothing that rises to that level of we're going outside. We need to rewrite guidelines at this point. I don't believe so. I think that's where the confusion came in. We're sitting back saying, wait a minute, you know, we're trying to stay within the walls of what we're doing. How is it becoming an issue again? That's, I think, the confusion.
Yeah, thank you. We have a freedom of information in South Carolina. I'm new to South Carolina.
Yes, sir.
Would you explain that just to give me some insight?
As far as a member of the public?
Yes, being asked, freedom of information.
Yeah,
And
so
would that speak to complaints that may have been made against the police department? Would that be available through a freedom of information?
Yeah.
To some extent.
These are for you.
For you, I'm talking about for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so someone can submit a FOIA for any information that we have in our possession here at the police department. We have 10 days to respond as to whether or not we have the records and whether or not we intend to produce those records. And then we have another 30 days to actually produce them, subject to the exemptions that are in the FOIA law.
Okay.
Some of those relate to prospective, you know, police investigations, personal privacy, confidential informants, personal information, social security numbers, driver's license numbers, all that sort of.
The reason I ask because I was told that you might want to keep a citizen complaint confidential. And I could understand if you could have a FOIA, that would not necessarily align with that, because a citizen, if I were a citizen just making a complaint, why would I want to keep it confidential if I made it to the police department? Why would I want to make it, you know, want to keep that confidential? So I'm not suggesting that we operate anyway outside. I'm just curious, as another private citizen might have a complaint and want that to be made known. There's nothing through FOIA that could be made known. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, FOIA doesn't exempt the whole record. It exempts certain aspects of the record. And, you know, there may be a situation where you may want to make an anonymous complaint, or you don't want your name out there because you were arrested for DUI and you don't want that made public.
Oh, I see.
But you still want to complain that the officer didn't do, you know, the procedure properly or whatever it is that happens. So.
That was helpful, thank you.
And the complaints aren't just citizen on set, on police. It could be, there's internal complaints.
Internal complaints.
There's a lot of complaints. And so in a FOIA, we're not going to get the statistics and everything else. So I think we're going to be able to bypass that with time, which is good. So.
All right, good.
You got what you need?
Yep.
Okay, you can recruit? You happy with just 2 people?
I'm happy. I want more. We want more. People might want to participate. He wants to participate. I think he volunteered before, didn't you? During the meeting, did you not?
I'm not sure if it ever got written down, but yeah,
Let him in.
I was available.
That's fine.
Jerry.
Just a note, since Captain Cortell indicated that the IA report for 23 will be coming out soon.
Hey, I'm up.
That's part of his report. It's on the agenda.
Get there.
It's on the agenda.
Don't get my thunder now.
Say to the recruitment, I'm not asking the question, it's the recruitment phase. When that report goes to the committee, all right, will be important for everybody to know, because other members who are not on the committee on a regular might want to participate in that discussion. That's my only point.
All right, any other questions for Harrison? All right, you got your marching orders, man. Ready to go. Okay, next thing, Jerry, you want to talk about your ERA?
Look, it's been beat to death already. Just want us to be looking forward. I guess I'll make one comment. The facilitation of the session by Council Member Tawan Fielding was what really made it successful in terms of making it flow. Should acknowledge that, I think, as significant. That is a resource that we have. My assignment from the initiation of the contract in March was to be in communication on behalf of CPAC with Bob Kale to monitor what was going on. The meetings held leading up to, once the report was released, meetings held leading up to the plans, Bob planning. We were involved through my participation in those discussions. The presentation at the meeting focused on what the findings were. He went on so long that he really didn't get to focus on the recommendations and the path forward. So the questions that as we work with, we figure out what we're going to do, what David's going to talk about in a minute, and how it interfaces with the strategic planning indicated by the chief becomes very important. Done.
Any questions for Jerry?
I mean, there were over what, nearly 200 people?
There's 279 people actually there. We have their names, right? The comments, I think there were like 14 different tables with 5 or 6 people at each table who responded to a series of questions. Their responses and the table summaries will be available, I believe, by the 9th. And as soon as they're available, they'll be just disseminated. Suzanne or the folks from Cajun asked that CPAC participate in the ongoing discussion about the kind of the postmortem and where do we go from here, and specifically asked for representatives, and it would be appropriate, Mr. Chairman, for you to decide, for us to decide if we're going to do that and who's going to be there.
And my segue into that is I did, so we got that, obviously we got the report and the information, and we were going to have a meeting and everything in between meetings. So I went ahead and appointed Dave Saunier to be the initial thing that I wanted him to do, and he worked with, they're still working together with Jerry, is to go through the ERA assessment and pull out as it relates to CPAC, because there was a lot of points about CPAC. To go through those, just like the chief has to do with all his, go through there and look at every area, and there's a lot of them, because I just pulled up the PDF and hit find. Every time they mention CPAC or Citizen Police Advisory, I mean, it's redundant because it's a big thing, but I asked him to catalog those. And once he's got those cataloged, build a team who can look at those and say, okay, we've looked at this, let's prioritize them, have recommendations, and then bring that to CPAC. And I really think, and we can as a group agree, whether we, we can take a vote if we want, but as my role as chair, I can appoint a subcommittee. So in this case, what I'd like to do, Dave, is because you're going to be focusing on that, put together a group. And I know you volunteered it. He actually recruited, he went.
I haven't even asked for anybody yet, and I got.
Yeah, left already, and Joe came up and said, really want to be involved. I said, well, yeah, you're at an ERA meeting and here's what we're doing. He needs help. So I'm going to put Dave in charge. So you heard Cajun. And to me, that's an important part. So if we're dealing with the assessment and the audit, that should fall under the purview of that subcommittee. And that should be a big subcommittee. That should mirror what Doris has for the most part, because there's a lot of opinion. There's, by having 9 people there, a lot of interested parties. So are you okay with that?
I mean, I'll figure it out. Wasn't planning on that big.
I'm good at volunteer. Yeah.
Yeah, just as a procedural note, and I'll defer back to Steve too, but my understanding is that if there is a subcommittee meeting where a quorum could be present, we have to post it publicly. So that's another thing that we would have a meeting where we would have to post in advance with the city, and it would be, we would record it. So just as an FYI,
I'm going to memorialize it then. So I'm going to, as a chair, I'm going to make I'm going to put on the floor that I'd like to create a subcommittee, the ERA Assessment Audit Review and Recommendations Subcommittee. Is there anybody want to second that?
I'll second.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Any discussions? Hearing none, I'll put it to a vote. All in favor of having a subcommittee, ERA Assessment Audit Review and Recommendations, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. I'm formally appointing Dave Saunier to be the chair of that subcommittee. Go forth and do great things. You'll work with Jill to schedule the meetings. You'll do a meeting report. But for now, I think that should be probably that's one you got. I know you've hit the ground running, but at a very breakneck pace, because as you heard, they want to have meetings quick. And we want to be a part of that from the beginning. So I don't want to play catch up and be reactive to it. We want to be part of that discussion, because in the past, I've seen where we haven't had our quorums, and sometimes, you go back about a year about 2 years ago, a year or two ago, where we couldn't get quorum for our meetings. And so we would just sit there and have 3 or 4 people and 5 people. We've got a lot of people. What I'm also liking is we're getting the focus from the mayor's office and the city council and all of that. We don't have to be a check the box. So let's take advantage of this enthusiasm that we have and get it done, but get it done the right way. All right. So this is another example of that public interaction. That's our responsibility. I did meet with, he was the incoming mayor at the time. Jerry and I met with him, and he kind of mirrored the reaction that Chief Walker is not the same person as Chief Reynolds. And, the more you get to know, if you knew Chief Reynolds and as much as you know Chief Walker, you'll see operationally, they're completely different. Chief Reynolds wants, all the different people. And I think from my perspective, Mayor Tecklenburg was the same way. All the different groups, an audience for everybody. These two seem more operationally driven, where they're going to have people that give, you meet with those groups, and they'll delegate out the meetings and say, okay, all of you come together and tell me what I need to know and how I need to know it. I can't be everywhere and do everything. That's why you have a staff, right? That's their job. A mayor that tries to be everything to everybody can sometimes not be an effective. Nice guy, they're always wonderful, but it's not effective leadership. And these two are coming in with I can tell you from my perspective, it's a different mindset. They're not going to go meet with 20 different groups all the time. They're going to rely, when it comes to this, I've been told by Chief Walker, Jerry was there, I've been told by the mayor, they're looking at CPAC to be that public facing, to give them the information, to receive information. That means we have to attend these forums. We have to be more open than we may have been in the past. And that's everybody. I know some of you have already been that. All of us have to do that. As I interview candidates, now the city council members, when they have candidates for CPAC, I always ask them, why don't you let them talk to me so I can set the right expectation? If you think you're just padding a civic resume, good luck, because this is a working group. You know, it's not for you to go out there and put on your LinkedIn, hey, I did this, it looks good, and you never show up to a meeting. We've had those. I'll never forget, we had a student who, that's what his mom, never talked to him in life. His mom would call to excuse him to do everything. He has too much on his plate. Ma'am, you volunteered. We didn't come ask you. So if you're going to be on this, and I set that expectation. All right. Any questions about Dave, go ahead and give your.
Well, I just want to make one comment just to kind of level set everything. This subcommittee is focusing on CPAC related items, not all ERA items. So we're not trying to step on the police's items that they're responsible for. We'll obviously want to know what they're doing, but my role, our role, the committee's role is those CPAC related items.
There were recommendations that were made about how we currently operate, and there's also recommendations, if you haven't read it, areas where the police department should be engaging CPAC and using us as a means to enact some of the changes they've been requested to make. And so that's part of it. So it's not only the ones pointed at us, but where we've been asked. Jerry?
Yeah, and the other thing is, in our guidelines, there are words, okay, that are also there. So it's what's specifically that says CPAC, but also things that fall into our guidelines that will be incorporated in conversation.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, if you're at these meetings and something comes up, it doesn't have to be limited, right? So, but these discussions are a result of that, right? And so your academic review is of the assessment itself. But as you go into these public meetings and you hear from the different groups, as it relates to the disparity that's being addressed by this, your group should be able to come to this group and say, hey guys, we know this wasn't addressed there, but we really think this is something that's important. You bring that to CPAC as a group and we'll hear it. Your subcommittee's recommending it, right? And we could turn around and say, yeah. And if it takes it to the level that we need to go to city council and say, hey, this came of that, and it's not part of our, we pursue those channels. But you go ahead and talk.
So I think you covered most of it. I think hopefully everybody's already read the whole review, the long review that it is. I sat down, just met with Jerry, had a nice lunch and talked through a lot of things. I presented to him kind of some of my priorities and what I thought maybe were important things. Jerry added a few more things. My goal now is with Joe and anybody else who would like to join the subcommittee is sit down, put together a plan, kind of a prioritization of things, try to throw together some timelines potentially, bring it back to this group, have you all look at it, have you all consider it, say, okay, David, Joe, and others, this looks like a good way to go about it, and then move forward, work with CPD, start jumping out with more people in the community, and really just report back on a regular basis of where we stand on trying to check boxes or complete tasks that were identified within the audit and recommendations.
Yeah, Jill and Stu, I think we've been operating in the past, and I want to make sure we're doing it right. In the past, we've been operating like policy. Everybody on CPAC gets the invite. Whoever wants to show, whoever doesn't. And it's not really been as quorum focused. Are you now trying to log who are the members so you can determine if their subcommittee only has 3 official members and 2 are there, they've got a quorum? Yeah, because they're having a meeting, but they're not taking actions on behalf of CPAC. Are they required to establish that quorum?
I think we want to move in that direction. I mean, we haven't had a problem. Our problem has been not having people participating. Now there are more people participating. And if you're on the subcommittee and doing the work, you should really be the one that's voting on that. Now, and then it eventually goes to the full council anyway for action. Right. So everyone has a chance to weigh in on it, but just for purposes of the subcommittee.
And that's a change, because what we've been doing is whenever there's a subcommittee, we just say, send the invite to all of them. And, if we can pack the room with 7 or 8 people who can make it. So hearing that, what we need to do is we need to formalize your membership of your subcommittees. Okay. So if you want your subcommittee to be 3 people, I think what everybody needs to do is look at your list of subcommittees that we have You know, you're welcome to be on all of them. If you want to participate in all of them, I think that's the greatest thing in the world. You know, as chair, that's my job is I get to sit in on all of them. I'm supposed to be like an ex officio in every one of them. So I'll go to all of them anyway. And I would, no matter what I was doing, but please look at that list and indicate and reach out to the subcommittee chair and copy Jill. And please indicate your membership so that we can formalize that. So if Dave's expecting to have 5 people and only one shows up, he didn't really have it. We can't call it an official meeting, right? So let's try to formalize that. I do still like the idea of you being able to invite, you know, we can all participate. It's a public meeting, right?
I have to post it, so that we post it.
But as far as your official membership in it, so that she can keep a roster of did they have a quorum or not? And if she's asked who are the members of it, I'll say, whenever she asks me, I say, well, everybody in CPAC's a member of it. And the reality is we, you know, while it's good that we do that, and I like that we do that, we probably need to formalize it.
Can we be clear in terms of publication in that? As what he said, does that address that issue of whether you have to publish or not?
So my understanding is that whenever there's a potential for a quorum, like if there's 3 people.
If 3 people on the committee.
On the subcommittee.
Subcommittee,
Yeah.
2 people would make a
Yeah,
quorum.
2 people make a
Okay.
quorum, but it still has to be posted publicly so the public
I can
can
understand.
view, can join if they wish, right, Steve?
Yeah, and I mean, usually when it becomes an issue, it's when there's meetings occurring outside of the
Right.
regular, you know, scheme. 2 guys go out for lunch that are on a committee and
Oh,
start talking
yes.
about, you know, committee business. That's really
That was
supposed to be a
explored.
public meeting.
You weren't a subcommittee yet.
No, they weren't.
Yeah.
We just
But now,
created it.
now
So
that
y'all
you
can
have
members
members,
having a conversation.
Wait a minute.
At the time.
So the 3 of you can't get together and,
We can't just stay together and.
Well, when you did that, remember at the time, this was, hey, go meet with Jerry so you guys can talk about, it, see if that's something you
Right.
want to do.
yeah, you weren't a
But going
subcommittee.
forward, anytime we get together, it has to be a
Mhm.
formal gathering.
Yep,
to talk.
yes.
If
If I'm,
the city council
Yeah.
meets, you know.
Yeah.
feel the same.
yeah, am I interpreting that properly? Yeah.
It is. Now, that doesn't mean that committee members can't communicate.
Okay.
Send an email with a document and say, you know, hey, I just reviewed this, take a look at my comments and let me know what you think.
Okay, with that said, so the next thing we were gonna do, I've got on the agenda is to reestablish our communications subcommittee, but if it's okay, I'm gonna table that because I think there's a lot on the table right now unless somebody wanted to volunteer. The communications subcommittee, I need a few minutes, yeah, I'll need to go offline and think about who gets voluntold. So unless it's jumping out at you, you wanna do that, Tommy, I'm thinking of you, so just don't think because you're my backseat, I don't know you're there. And I'll talk with you offline about that because I think that's a very important one to have. So I'm gonna table that for now, if everybody's okay with that. Jill, procedural justice, I know they dumped it all on you this month, didn't they?
My hands in a little bit of everything, as you all know. So let me start with the kind of interesting, like the stuff that has more meat on it. So first of all, it's great to see you all in person. I like this style of interaction. I am going to provide you with a high-level overview of the recently awarded Smart Policing Grant that the Charleston Police Department was awarded by the Bureau of Justice Assistance. We talked about it a little before we started focusing on ERA, and so we want to just make sure that we provide a summary for everybody and talk about where we are in the process and obviously any feedback that you have at this point that we can kind of work into the earlier stages, we'll definitely hear that. So just for people that are new to this or didn't know before, the agency is an evidence-based practice-oriented agency, which means that we're always trying to continuously improve. And by that, we go after grant money at the federal level that will help us really push the envelope and try different initiatives that have the possibility of reducing crime, improving community engagement, also just so we learn more about what works and what doesn't work. And by getting this funding, we're also educating other departments and other practitioners around the country about our successes and frankly, our failures and our challenges. So that's why the Bureau of Justice Assistance through the National Institute of Justice offers a portfolio of different initiatives that they fund when you submit a compelling application where you're actually going to achieve or seek those goals. So we applied and actually it was pretty early on last year. to develop or further develop our community problem-oriented policing initiatives. So this is something that took root in the department before my entry. This was something that Captain Bruder worked in depth with, and a lot of our commanders were trained in the initiative, and we wanted to build that out. And so we applied. It was a competitive process. We were told that we had a great application. It was, they received a lot of strong applications, but we were fortunate enough to be awarded. So we received, as a result, $800,000 of federal money. We did not have to match it. So this was just money that they gave to us to try something new and exciting. And we are going to use that money over the next 3 years to build, test, and sustain our community problem-oriented policing efforts at the department. So what that entails is we're going to be working hand in hand with our research partner from the University of Cincinnati. We actually started working with this research partner years ago. They were the ones that came in through a smaller grant and trained a lot of our command staff and some of the sergeants and some of the officers on what community problem-oriented policing is. So just in a nutshell, it's basically a systematic way to evaluate a crime problem or a crime hotspot, whether it's violent crime or property crime, or in our case, traffic crime too as well. And you apply a process where you analyze and assess the problem, and you try to come up with innovative solutions beyond just enforcement. You're really trying to think about what the causes are that are leading to the crime or the issue, and pull together as many resources as you can to attack the problem in a different way. So sometimes that involves getting place managers that are in the area where there's a lot of property crime to come to the table and help out. Sometimes that involves buying, signs to put up and alert people if there are a lot of break-ins into vehicles. And other times it may involve enforcement. But what we're trying to do here is think about problems in the area that are evident in the data that we can bring to bear a lot of different resources and strategies to try to think about innovative ways to address that. And there's a whole model, there's a SARA model that's used, that's applied, that's basically scan the problem, analyze the problem, create responses, then you apply the responses, and then you assess. And so that's sort of the cycle of what you do when you are working in the community problem policing model. So what our application entailed was we said that over the next 3 years, we're going to work with the University of Cincinnati to continue to build out our training for officers and for higher level command staff on how to properly apply SARA. Then we're going to work with our data team to identify different hotspots, or in each of the geographic teams. We have 5 geographic teams, so teams 1 through 5, which are downtown, Daniel Island, James Island, Johns Island. We also have a team 9, which is strictly central business district. So each of those teams, we're going to look at data and identify what we call hotspots. And those are sort of a fancy scientific term for areas that have higher than average crime incidents or reports in 3 of the different areas: violent crime, property crime, and traffic crime. And what we're going to do is we're going to aim to pick 2 different hotspots in those areas, so 6 total per team. And then we're going to work with our research partners they're going to guide us in how we're going to apply the SARA model to those problems. We'll also be reaching out to community members that are stakeholders in each of the crime problems once we determine what they are. And they're going to help us measure our implementation. And the reason we're picking 2 is because part of this is a rigorous scientific evaluation that will also be conducted by our outside University of Cincinnati partner. So we're going to have one that's going to function as a control, where we're going to keep the same patrol strategies, the same implementation, and that's going to be compared to the investigative one, where we're going to actually apply the different CPOP procedure. And over time, they're going to be able to tell us, by comparing the 2 with similar conditions and similar locations, what the impact of our strategies are. One of the things that we find when we do research and we do a global change is we can't tell you whether it worked or not, because we don't know if something else besides our implementation was responsible for it. So if we have one that's business as usual versus one that is the impact area, we're better able to make those comparisons and find out the impact of what we did. So the funding that we have over the next 3 years is going to pay for the research team involvement, because they're going to have to make trips down here and help train us and spend a lot of time working with us as we work through our problems and narrow our focus. They're also going to do the evaluation. We also, as part of this, and this sort of dovetails with the ERA recommendations, we really want to expand and improve our data systems so we can take some of the data that are currently siloed and make the process of analyzing them a lot quicker. And we'd like to build out some dashboards for internal and hopefully public use. So a lot of the information that people are interested in knowing about our enforcement activities can be viewable to the public in a better interface. And so that's where I hope you all will come in when we actually have some products down the road, when we work with a vendor to help us build out that system, that you all will help us, investigate those data products and, help us improve and give us feedback on what works, what doesn't, how we can make it more informative to members of the community. And then we also have some additional funding for project support. So we have a little bit of money available to help us support the problem responses, whatever they end up being. So as for timeline, it is a 3-year grant. And so right now we're in the planning phase where we just recently were assigned a technical assistance provider, which is through CNA. They worked with us on our original audit. It's a different team within that organization, but they're basically going to be helping us further refine our strategies. And once we have a better understanding and a further refinement of our action plan or what we plan to do, we'll be able to start implementation. And so the implementation will begin later this year with training. And we'll also, come back and report to you on where we are in the project and what to expect and what information we want the community to know. And then when we are able to identify after the training, the specific hotspots, we'll reach out to you all. And I can see you all being very informative and helpful by helping us identify the stakeholders that are important in the problems that we're going to be working towards addressing in this innovative way. And then also, as I said, I think that the data products that we produce and the information, helping us kind of refine those and build those out in a way that's informative and helpful will be really important. And you all will have a lot to help us with that. But as of right now, we probably will not expect to do any actual implementation until 2025, just because it'll take us some time to work on the action plan. It'll also take us some time to do the training and then the scanning analysis and development of our response plans. But after 2025 is when we'll start collecting data on how well those response plans worked. And the ultimate goal for the agency, in addition to memorializing this and building out these data systems, is to create a policy around CPOP moving forward that we'll be able to lean on for years to come. So I know that's a lot, that's a mouthful, but if anybody has, I know this is really early on in the project too, but I'm happy to take any feedback that you all have about better ways to maybe engage the community, specifically those who, when we identify the problem areas, will want to call upon to get their input. Yes, Ms. Mack.
Well, this is something that I'm very passionate about.
Oh, wonderful.
When I relocated back to Charleston, Team 1 was a team that was put together through a funding, and they were specifically to work on the east side.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they did a magnanimous job because we had officers that knew the people in the community. They had cars that came through. They had bikes that came through. But over the past couple of years, they were derelict in patrolling our areas. And I take another exception. What about the monies that you're spending for police cars to be parked from Cannon Street all the way downtown? And there's no coverage in my area, and I live on Hanover Street between Hempstead and Columbus. And I felt that, I don't know how you made how the transition was made to not put teamwork the same way it was before, and then perhaps do something else that I heard one time, 1 and 9 was merged together.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the people that we could call by name, and I said, because it was under Chief Mullins that this occurred, because he had gotten a grant.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, I spoke when, God bless the dead, Chief Reynolds. And I said, whenever I have a problem, I like the fact that I could go straight to the top. And most people in the room probably looking at me like, what are you talking about? But I'm saying, if something was working, then what happened? Something had to have happened for Team 1 not to function over on the east side. And we have a lot of statistics deaths and everything, fentanyl. You're finding people in the street dead and all of that stuff. And so I was just wondering, since you got this amount of money, whether you were going to go back and look at what was done prior with Team One and its coverage of the east side.
Yeah, I know that's not a specific goal that is part of this grant. However, the coverage of the different areas or the hotspot areas, I'm sure will be something that come up in discussions, but I appreciate your sentiment about that. And it does appear that, you are zeroing in on the community police relationship and the community policing model. That you like to be able to know the officers that are patrolling your area, and the leadership especially, so you can go and comment.
But even with that, the Team One only worked from 11 to 7. So I knew everybody. But now 7 p.m. on, I don't know who those people are. Because there was an incident across the street when, I don't know if you all know the place, Hotel Palace on Hanover Street. Well, I live diagonal to that. And there was an incident where I called the police. And when this officer came out of the car, he was told where the incident occurred. But because my husband and his friend was standing up there, he came directly to them and asked that we call the police. And I called up the chief and I said, your officer could have gotten my husband killed. And I said, that I don't know where that goes under training, but that was not acceptable. And to this day, no, not to this day. It was 6 months afterwards when the new sergeant was assigned to the area. And he brought that officer to my house and made him apologize because there was nothing in the record to indicate that that was a resolved issue. And I'm saying, I have firsthand knowledge about certain things that occur in Charleston since I've been here, but that was one of the things. And that's why I said I wanted to find out what those funds, were they going to at least go back and look at what was done by Team One and whether you were going to reactivate that to cover the community the way it should be.
Charlotte's Team One now, right?
Who?
She needs to reach out, huh?
Okay.
Yeah, that was.
Oh, she comes to the
Good.
neighborhood meeting, but I don't go anymore.
Yes.
There's a crime page that you can go to see where a car was stolen, where drugs were sold, and a gun was taken. Is this going to be online?
So the plan right now is to be able to put out dashboards. So yeah, you can basically see crime incidents in certain locations. And then I think we'll have some way to overlay enforcement as well. But in terms of what specifically will be shown, we're going to have to work on building that out. But yeah, the idea is for you all to be able to zero in on an area and see, the reports, the crime reports, and also information about police activity.
But
Yeah.
how is that any different than what we have right now?
Well, right now, I think you aren't able to really interact with the interface and drill down into what the specific problem and enforcement strategies are. And
You don't see the enforcement, but you see it was a drug call. You can see because they label it with that, but yeah, everything's listed as report cleared, but you don't know was an arrest made, was
So find it.
website, that website that we shared and we had a public member, had a big Zoom meeting. I'll forward it to you.
Yeah, Jason.
Let me, I'm gonna give a
Yeah.
very basic, just stick with me for a minute on some of the vision with this. And the reality to it is much of what we're trying to do is reduce the fear of crime. Where you are, the fear might be different. And there's a lot to that. But most of our data is based off of facilitating a process. Typically, it's either starting an investigation of a crime, and seeing that through to somebody being arrested. It's working a collision and writing people tickets, and the tickets get through there. Well, police have naturally just evolved. The data we already have is the data we'll use. So if somebody calls, and again, this is a simple example, but let's say Doris, because you're sitting next to me, you may have called me about this before. I don't know. I can't remember. But let's say Doris lives on a cul-de-sac and everybody runs the stop sign. So I'm like, okay, officers, go over there and deal with this stop sign. Well, what data do we have? How am I going to judge that we're successful? Well, I called Doris a few days later and I say, hey, Doris, we wrote 100 tickets at that stop sign. You're right. They're running it all the time. We're writing tickets because that's what we have, right? That's what police have traditionally done over decades. This isn't new, but this is what we've done. Well, that's great. Doris was like, great. He called me back the next day and goes, guess what? They're still running the stop sign. Can you come back out here? And I'm like, okay. We go back out there. The only thing we have to show what we're doing is we pulled this number of traffic stops and we wrote this many tickets, right? Well, what we hope to get here is, what's the problem? They go out there, they analyze the problem, and they realize, well, yeah, there's people running the stop sign. They write a couple of things. Like, why is everybody running the stop sign? Then they go and they look at it from a different angle and they realize the stop sign's blocked by a tree. And they actually call urban forestry over there. They cut down the branch that's blocking it. And the officer watches it for a little bit longer and is like, everybody started stopping for the stop sign, right? The problem wasn't when people running the stop sign. The problem was the stop sign was blocked. But we can continue to count the number of tickets we write, and that can be considered our success. Or what we're hoping to develop in this is that we'll have a system in place where we can say, we received your complaint about this stop sign. Here's what actually solved this problem. And then we can reflect that by out. And if that becomes interactive, and yes, there's way more complicated ones that might be drug houses, or it might be this, and it might be, crime spread through an area, or it might be shoplifting at a certain store. There'll be all different kinds of problems, but we need some way to capture that so that we can actually see what's solving the problems that are for our community is having. Does that make a little bit more sense on how? So I don't need a number of tickets that was written, or a number of warnings or motor vehicle stops. That is a tool we will use to solve the problem. And sometimes that is what works. We write a certain number of tickets and we just realize we're going to have to go back every couple of weeks and write more tickets there. But if there's a way we can solve a problem, we want to capture that. So next time that complaint comes in, if I'm the commander, great. But next time it might be, Tony might be the commander. He doesn't have to start over at square one and go, hey, last time we had to trim the tree and it's been about 6 months. Let's go out and start trimming the tree first. We trim the tree, it's done. No tickets written, because that wasn't the issue. Now our officers can spend less time writing hundreds of tickets on a problem that they're not actually going to have a solution to solve, right? They can solve other problems in the community. And at first, when we do this, we're going to have to develop the problems, right? We're going to be asking, but eventually they're going to be people walking down the street going, hey, Miss Matt, what's the problem in your community? Your neighbors won't take back their trash cans. Okay. But that creates a sense of, that quality of life in the neighborhood. So that might be the issue, right? And that might be what the officer that works in your area starts to address. We need a way to categorize that. We need a way to reward them for doing those things that are solving issues for you in the community, not just what the systems we already have in place, like tickets and arrests and all that type of stuff, and investigation claims. All those things are important. They matter. There's people that come to us and want us to investigate crime. We want to have a high clearance rate for that, but we also need to make sure we're capturing this other stuff. So that's kind of Jill did a great job at summarizing it, but that's my layman's term of, that's what I want to see from it. That's how we're kind of building it and designing. And that's what we've talked with our research partners about, is how to capture that and how to relay that into that.
Yeah, that's a great example to flesh it out, and how that will look. I can't really say right now, but the goal is, to better tell the story. The better tell the story of what is actually, what the actions are out in the community and whether we see impact from those. And we'll have to think carefully about data visualization, and obviously, not just replicating something that's already in existence. So that feedback's helpful. I appreciate it.
Jill, what's the verbiage behind Paul?
Oh, sorry. Let me move that. Yes.
That's real quick. Who over at UC spearheading their into this?
So this is Dr. Corey Haberman. He works for the University, I think, of Crime Sciences. He's the director there. And he's the one that came in several years ago and started the training for the department on problem-oriented policing.
Were there other jurisdictions that got similar grants?
There were, we
You're
were,
gonna
yeah.
Compare us to them or?
Sure, yeah, so they award, there's like a cohort of cities or municipalities that receive these funds every year. Each of their projects vary. We were told there were 10 in the country that were awarded this. So it's, we're thrilled to have it, and it'll be a lot of work, but it's something that we're excited about and something that we're gonna try something new and, be able to build out an interface that we wouldn't have before and memorialize.
Could these be recurring grants?
Sure. So my experience is that generally, like, they don't just give the grants to the same city each time,
They
but
don't?
certainly,
Okay.
but I think if your proposal is compelling enough to say, look what we did, and this is kind of how we got this one, because there was a smaller grant that was awarded to bring in Dr. Haberman at the beginning, and then basically said, we already have the foundation, give us more money to help us build that out. So I think if we create a compelling enough argument to say, well, we did this and now we want to go bigger and do this, and you can align it with whatever the portfolio is or what the objectives are that they are seeking to have tested, then certainly you could apply for another one, but I
Are there
don't.
any recurring grants to other jurisdictions?
Any recurring grants to other jurisdictions?
Those who
like,
received the grants before and they were re-granted.
I don't know of any personally.
Okay.
I think
Yeah.
they're paying to teach you how to fish.
Mhm.
They're not gonna do the fishing for you for the rest of your lives.
Yeah.
I understand.
And BJA and NIJ are both really focused right now on seeing the research in action. They're not wanting these 10-year studies that
Yeah,
mattered
3 years.
last decade. They want to see how you're making it work.
They're doing that to get the communities to invest in themselves, to see your results and say, hey, spend your own money to do this.
Well, and they're realizing that the academia is a decade behind operation, and that's not helpful.
Well, and that's why to apply for this money, we had to demonstrate a partner that would help us evaluate it. Because one thing that they don't want to do is give a lot of money to a municipality and not be able to know whether. And so one of the requirements is that we evaluate, or we don't, but we have an outside team evaluate our success and failure.
Jill, as compelling as you are.
We got to move.
People are looking at their watch.
I hear you. I could talk about this all day. So if anybody has comments, feel free to let me know.
Question, how does someone who is a non-member of the police department who wants to understand how to use this tool get oriented to it? Is there some tutorial or reading or something that folks can do? Because I hear you saying that you're going to go to community stakeholders to help identify problems and suggest solutions. If they don't know what you're talking about in the context of this is,
Wouldn't that be similar to the series? We did a big public session.
I'm asking, are there resources committed in the grant, okay, to create a community education, in those 6 areas, or for folks to be involved so they can be active players as opposed to you guys getting smart, collecting data. I'm just asking.
I think I hear what you're saying, more or less, as part of the grant facilitating the discussion at the level around these problems. And I would say, yes, we're sitting down in the next couple of weeks to figure that out and iron out exactly what all this does. Holistically, yes, not only do we want to identify the problem, we want the community to eventually identify the problems for us.
So how does the community get ready to play a role?
Well, that's where building these relationships and having, like, we can look at the goal where we'd like to be, but we've got to get there, right? Like, eventually it's going to be like she was talking, like Ms. Mack was talking about, where she knows the officer on the street, she calls them and they go back and say, hey, I need to set up this problem or your policing thing to solve this problem. That's the goal, but we got to figure out how to get there. That's what the research team is going to help us with. And us and you all, and coming back to you all, like, hey, how would you like to see us come to our neighborhood? Do you want us to do a webinar? Or do you want us to have a cookout? Do you want to, and it's going to be different for every neighborhood. It's going to be different.
And I
for every
think the
street.
communications team might help us too with that.
And Jerry, the reality is we keep eating our drum. Wait for that call. We keep calling them, right? And say, hey,
there's a model. She talks about Sarah. If we know, I'm just use us as a team. If we know what Sarah is, all right, then we can talk to folks about it. If we don't know what Sarah is, if I'm not literate in it, I can't be helpful. So I want to be more helpful around this.
Okay. So like maybe a Sarah training for the community or.
We need to have like ambassadors.
Yeah, I dig it. I think that's a great idea.
Playing devil's advocate here. Kevin sells insurance. Kevin gets his report, his computer, and he sees that there have been 50 break-ins and just asking, okay? we might go back to redlining where he won't write insurance in Ardmore anymore. Or he might not write insurance in Winthrop Forest. I can see this data going crazy if it's not monitored somehow. And I'm a realtor, and if I see a hot spot, I'm gonna refer my parents to go buy a house over in that area. I'm gonna say, no, they've had 3 shootings, they've got 18 drug
Yeah,
deals.
that's the double-edged sword of it, but yes.
My response to that is, as a realtor, do you know those areas now? Would you rather us acknowledge that we're doing something about it and see, or would you rather not know that we know it, right? So that'd be the big picture that.
To move over there, 'cause I know there've been 42 drug deals. That's,
But if you see that we've addressed, we've identified it as a problem, you see the work that we can report out on case and how we do it. And then hopefully, this is how far I thought about this. It goes from a red problem to a green problem because we've solved it and we know to keep monitoring it, right? And that officer that's in that area knows this was the problem. If that starts to see that again, they're going to address it before it becomes an issue, right?
And correct me if I'm wrong, this information's already there on
Right,
that map.
a lot of it's already
I
out.
drill down the map all the time.
When the sexual registry came out, everybody jumps online and goes and looks in their neighborhood. They had no idea the guy 3 doors down from them. It's like, well, the more you know, right? Does it impact property values? Absolutely. But the reality is, if it's happening, they need to know it and we need to know it, because if there is drug activity in my neighborhood and I'm sending my kid out on their bike, I'd rather know it, right? So you do want to see, and it also lets me know, me as a homeowner, I may know there's problems, or a renter, I know there's problems in my neighborhood, and I go on that dashboard and I don't see any police activity. I should be raising hell. I'm getting together with my community saying, do we need our own, community watch? Do we need all these different things? What can we do to get the police involved? So I get it from the real estate side, but as a homeowner, I kind of I go on my neighborhood every blue moon now that we have the dashboard, and I'll, is it good and bad? Yeah, we had somebody complaining to us because they found out there was a halfway home in there. Guys, FHA, you can't, that's a federal law. You can't discriminate against them. Yeah, you want to go bring pitchforks, but bottom line is leave them alone. So yeah, the more people know, it's a double-edged sword, but I'd rather know. I mean, I'd rather be educated than bliss is blind. I can't do that. But yeah, you're right.
It will be followed.
Don't send them. Yeah, don't send them to that neighborhood. That's good. You have the tools, because it's worse if you sell a home to somebody and they find out you just sold me a home in a crime infested neighborhood. You didn't tell me, All right. Jill, public meetings.
I'll do a quick, so I think we've spoken about this a lot tonight, so I'll just add that we're in response, obviously, we're interested to hear to see the written feedback from the meeting. And we are meeting internally to work on our plan moving forward on next steps that we will, when we have that ready. We're thinking about all the recommendations. We'd like to hear, obviously, what you guys come up with on how CPAC may be making some adjustments based on the report. And then as we've committed to City Council and you all, we will be offering up our response, our next steps in a plan. And I know the chief has said that he wants to start work on the strategic leadership plan in the second quarter. So we'll have to make sure that those coincide. Our next steps on the public meetings, unless there are questions on that. Okay, I can keep. So I believe that through the chief and Vice Chair Harris, I feel like the strategic plan update, we've already covered that, if that's okay. And then the last thing is there hasn't been any movement. The Cajun CPD motor vehicle stops community meeting is on hold. At this point, we are focusing on the ERA, and we're going to be seeing if we can reassess the topic, timing, maybe broadening the partnership. But the chief did want me to expand on the fact that we, and Jason's going to mention this too. We do have our next Citizens Police Academy coming up from April 10th to May 29th. That'll be Wednesdays from 6:30 to 8:30. We have 25 slots, so please send people or go if you haven't. It's awesome.
Let's stop for a minute if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I mean, I don't want it to go over, but I still am going to rewind it.
Mhm.
So the motor vehicle stops community meeting, guys, I'll be fair, and you're probably long on this, but Jack is listening, and I know the chief will watch it later. You have a captain in charge of traffic, right? It doesn't require you guys to do everything. So the more we push that off, I mean, I know it's not our request as CPAC, but the bottom line is, I know they've been asking for it for a long time. And so the results of that ERA assessment, what was the thing that jumped out to everybody? Was the disparities in the traffic, because that was the only data that really, I mean, it was like a kudos to you guys for everything, and I get it. But that's not, this is my perspective. You can't keep kicking that can down the street. What I would do as a leader is say, hey, got a captain in charge of that, put together, let's find out what the topics are and get the ball rolling, get these groups engaged to it. Because what did we say? What did you tell them 3 or 4 months ago? Guys, we're in the middle of an assessment now. We can't do it now. Now we're getting the results of assessment. We can't do it now. I promise you, we all have our own jobs. We all do the same thing. That we'll find, because that uncomfortable conversation is not something, it's like eating the vegetables on the plate. I'm gonna keep moving them, right? The more you do that, the more you're inflaming the public, rightfully so, because this is a meeting that we just keep out. That's just from my perspective, we don't need to keep skipping over that in our agenda. We need to say, as CPAC, if the public wants that, and they obviously do, there's nothing wrong with having that meeting to talk about, no, you're not going to address, you're not going to have all the answers, but that meeting's been, they've been requesting that for a long time.
And the reaction is that it's a question, it doesn't build trust. And I think it's important that we.
And you're not answering how do we solve traffic disparity? I mean, if you had the answers, none of us would be here, right? I mean, let's understand the expectation, but have that open dialogue. Hey, here are some of the numbers that we have, data reports that the captain, from my perspective, the captain over traffic should be addressing, maybe giving them an update on, hey, I'm the new commander, because it is a new commander, and this is what I'm giving, and I know all policies and procedures, but every commander has different highlights. Here's my perspective. This is what I'm talking to my team about, and get feedback. And it's a back and forth really quick. You're not solving it. The more you put off that meeting, you're not doing yourself a service, and it's our job to point that out to you.
I can follow up on that really briefly. I was sitting at that community meeting with several ladies who I've never met before, and their main feedback was, oh, thank God, they gave us data and it was not positive. And that means they're being truthful.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we only got positive data, we figured that there's something fishy.
Right.
What they want is regular droplets of data, and just to keep that window open. And they just repeated that to me over and over all night. So.
All right. Sorry about that, Joe, but I had to.
Oh, no worries. I took notes.
Okay. Let me see. Captain Rotella, you're up.
Yeah, so for the annual report, the goal is that by the end of the first quarter, we will get it out, not only the department annual report, but also the internal affairs annual report, because those two reports overlap. We'll get out by the first quarter, so hopefully by Friday, April 5th, it'll be disseminated publicly. We have our internal timeline. We have reached the first round of the first submissions. And there's a lot of vetting and just configurations that we have to do on our back end. Thank gosh I have Jill here to help me out, because she's the mastermind behind all of that. So I kind of give it to her, and then she vets it in terms of formatting, and they'll go through the legal review, but we are on time for that.
For the 2023, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You notice we took the date off of here. Because you know what it was last month?
Well, we had 2022. We gave that disseminated to the public in June. That's when it was finished. We got behind because of Chief Reynolds' funeral, so that took a toll. But we just
took a couple hours.
So
stop it.
We're here.
I mean, stop it. It's just some big guys. I mean, I'm trying to be flippant, but we can keep kicking the can. But like you all say, next man up, and we keep. Hey, we're law enforcement. We don't take a day off. We don't take an hour off. Got to keep going, right? I was going to get you on that one. I warned him in advance.
He did.
You did. All right, guys. Any questions for Captain Crotella? Hey, Captain Bruder.
Everyone, I realize on the left. Luckily, most of what some coverage already hit on. The Citizens Academy, again, spread that word, set the link and stuff. We just made it live today. If y'all would have it for this meeting, we can talk about that. So Jill's going to email that link to y'all. It also comes with a cool picture. If you want to share it on social media, go for it. Tiger Academy is coming up. Keep an eye on that. That's on channels 2 and 5. I think we're going to be covering that. Just a neat thing. And if you're like, hey, after you hear about it, you want to, you've got a contact, or really if there's any forum for the recruiting side of things that you feel like, hey, good, I'd like for you to come to this men's group and talk about what it takes to be a police officer or this type of thing. Let me know, coordinate that with me. We'll get somebody, either me or somebody will come talk to you. I think there's a lot of things that, especially in these communities where we're struggling to recruit, as you were talking about earlier, they don't know what the requirements are to become a police officer. So they're finding themselves in these troubled areas. And then when they go to apply, they're hitting automatic disqualifiers, whether it's drug use and that type of stuff.
I'm going to make a formal request to you. I made it of your predecessor. It didn't happen, so I'm going to turn to you. So at your Citizen Police Academy, I would like a representative of CPAC to be fit in for even 10-minute of the citizens' involvement in that. Same thing for these Tiger Academies. I mean, what a good recruiting tool to know that the public is also engaged, right? You know, we hear about a lot of communities where the public's against law enforcement or whatever's happening, but we've made that request before that we think that, you know, the more we can come into, that's also how we recruit. You know, everybody in here, almost everybody in here has been to the police academy, and that's how we were recruited. Those are the people we want, the people that have already shown that advanced interest, not just, hey, this would look good on my resume, right? So I'm going to make that formal request to you that I'd like a representative to be able to, you know, just 10 minutes to go there and say something.
I'll get that out to you all, see who's available. Of course, when you were in our Citizens Academy, this go around, we'll let you speak. But
Is anybody who still hasn't? Have you done it?
that's how.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
So this guy went to the real one. We already. It's like, yeah, I went to the real one. Those of you that, yeah, I mean, most of y'all know he was a police officer before he became a lawyer.
But you know,
and we talked about it, and I said, this is a different perspective.
Right
Yeah.
here.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, this is a different perspective. They don't haze you in this one. So yeah, are you planning on doing it?
At some point.
Then I'll encourage you, won't we? We want to be their taser dad.
You're busy.
We'll also get y'all the schedule so y'all can drop in.
Yeah,
if you want.
I'll keep you guys.
But just like,
Everybody likes to go to the CD. That way you don't have time to do the whole thing. Just go around. Come and see. So.
but either way, you know what's a good idea is graduation day when you guys are having them in here today.
Best time.
The 10 minutes of, hey, congratulations, thanks for participating. Here's what CPAC is, and just because it is hard to fit us in on the night you're tasing people and motor vehicle stops. You know, for those that weren't, Jerry was my partner, and Jerry tases people the first time, and then when they're on the ground, it's like, oh crap. It's double tap.
No, he talked about some of our new professional staff on the outreach side. We did, I think I mentioned it maybe last meeting, but mental health clinician, we've got an on-board embedded clinician. She's right after our crisis calls. She went with our outreach team over to the bridge earlier. So she's out. We're still getting her in the works of everything, but that's good. He mentioned Jerome already with our youth program. So if you've got any ideas like that, again, a different type of outreach, getting to a different community there. We'll be having our Hispanic liaison program started up with, since we can get that posted. And the last thing I'll say is we're still in coordination with Lens, which makes a lot of this stuff possible. You already mentioned them tonight, but a lot of our outreach type initiatives and our stuff we do that you've seen, you know, they fund a good bit of it. So we appreciate their partnership there, especially when officers, I don't know if y'all saw, it went kind of viral. An officer delivered pizza because their driver got in a wreck on the way. So the officer finished the delivery. We've also got officers that are doing a lot of good work. We're trying to capture on the public information side there. We had that cold spell. We found out an officer had dropped about $100 going to buy gloves and socks and hats for people that were unhoused and they didn't want to go to a shelter. So they were there doing those types of things. So we try to get them reimbursed.
Yeah, whoever's doing your social media now is doing a bang up job compared to what it was. I mean, it's incredible, the volume.
So follow us on X for live type stuff. So Twitter, that's going to be our breaking news type stuff. But the feel good, fun stuff is usually on Facebook and Instagram. So if you're not following us, please do it. And please share it because that's how we get a lot of our word out.
Jerry.
Yeah, I just asked, Paul talked about the Lens support for the award ceremony. I think it'd be timely for us to build a bridge between Lens and what CPAC is doing. We constantly reached out to Lens folks in the business community to try to get some in attendance at the recent forum, and I think that's an area that I think we could build.
Even the chair and vice chair were there. The chair of Lens was there and the vice chair.
Yeah, I'm saying, but a little bit more cooperation and communication to see how we can work together.
All right. Good for me.
Anybody got anything else? Yes, sir.
Yeah, just want to follow up and say that, thank you all for having me. I'm gonna come to these as much as I'm available. There's only one of me and a lot of meetings at a lot of times, so. But I wanted to echo what Paul was saying as well about the way this mayor works and kind of his philosophy on stuff is we want to get to a point where we can identify problems and then also solutions and basically take decision points to him and say, hey, here's an idea. Jerry, I've got an email in my inbox from you, and I've actually written out a bunch of stuff that I want to go over with for you. And my in-laws are in town tonight, so I hope you have like 5 minutes after this, because I'm stalling for as long as I can.
You know, it's.
We're not watching.
You got a lot of lawyers in the room, but none are divorce lawyers, so.
Yeah, and you know, that you can't divorce your in-laws, unfortunately, so,
I did a few times.
it's the way that he thinks is that we want to find creative ideas and we want to steal other people's homework and copy it. So if people in other communities are doing stuff that's cool, we find innovative stuff, let's go out and take it. And Jill, we haven't met yet, but your reputation precedes you. And so it's great to see you.
Same one.
Anything y'all have, I'm available and accessible, and so is the mayor. And we just want to extend that. Mr. Harris is taking me up on it, and we got some good stuff to go over. So anybody else in the room that wants to do that, I'm always available to sit down. And I don't have business cards yet.
If you need to reach out to him, let me know. I've got his contact information. I'll send you his email. But yeah, we appreciate it, you know, and the fact that you're here, Kevin, that you're here, that's a first in the, what have I been on here, 4 years now? That's a first for both. Thank you. And we really appreciate that.
Thank you for letting me come. Yeah.
And hopefully this was an engaging enough meeting for y'all to see that, I mean, this is actually for us typical. You know, there's a lot of good back and forth, and, you know, we want to make an impact. So we appreciate you joining. All right, with that being said, it is 7:14. I'm going to adjourn the meeting, go with God, have fun, and be safe out there.
Thanks for